Okay, all right. You guys start. What were you guys talking about? Sorry.
Nah, I was just saying like her point, like when she said like, oh yeah, we don't really need women authors. Like after reading this, I'm like, damn, yeah, like after it's like just feels so different. The perspective is so like refreshing, kind of compared to what I'm used to reading.
Facts.
I didn't realize how much of a difference like the gender of the author made in the writing. Now after reading this, I mean, it
Yeah,
is also very focused on gender too, which makes a difference. But
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's one. Yeah, I'm actually so excited to talk about this book. I took a full 180. I started reading this book like very uh skeptic. Like I was skeptical when I started the book because and then I'll explain why later. And then like a couple chapters, I was like, this is like honestly one of the best books I've ever read in my life. Like it's so fire. Like I love this book actually, like to another level, and it's really opened my eyes to a lot of things and just made me more empathetic as a human being. So like this book has definitely done magic. I love it. So I'm excited to talk about it. Azizi,
yeah,
Yeah.
you
like actually, like I feel like all the like LGBTQ rhetoric I'm used to seeing is like always like social media, like libtard kind of stuff. Like, people will post on their story like the bullet points, and like it kind of makes me jaded. And like to read like a much more like well thought out, like beautiful story that like kind of explains it in a much more personal way that's like a lot more compelling. I was like, okay, like I'm so glad that I actually read this good perspective, because now I can like empathize with those people much more compared
mm-hmm.
to just seeing like these like angry people on social media.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great point, and it's like a lot of times people who are speaking like that aren't even the people who are of that community. So like I feel like this really like humanizes the experiences of someone like through the lived, at least it's through their eyes. It's not like someone who's not actually experiencing that just like speaking out. Sometimes I feel like that comes from a place of like I want to be a good person, so then I'm going to push all this rhetoric out just so other I feel like I'm good myself, as opposed to this is actually my lived experience. Like I am no different than the
Is
rest
it
of
the
you.
author's lived experience though? I feel like I
No,
don't.
I'm just saying that's what I was saying, like through the characters' lived experience, not
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like it's not like someone who's outside of that bubble just like speaking for the sake of some other purpose. So I guess like what I'm trying to say is like sometimes it's easy to like, let's say I'm going through like a period of my life where I'm really self-doubting, right? And so to push that away, I'm like I'm going to stand up for this cause and I'm going to devote my entire existence to this one cause so I can like push away all these other thoughts I have. Like what am I doing with my life? Am I a good person? And I feel like when I read that type of stuff on Twitter, which is what we oftentimes see, it's like that comes from a whole different place of like hear me, like this is what you know my life is, as opposed to like look at how good of it becomes like this ethics thing where it's like look how good of a person I am. I'm a good person. You're a
Like
bad person.
virtue signaling.
Exactly. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's and as what Jokes was saying, I feel like that's I've been exposed to that much more than just like this is my life.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So what about you, Aditi? How did you hear about this book? And
Oh, I just looked up book club books, but
uh,
it wasn't anything big. But I definitely am really enjoying it, and I like how it's so far it's been six like separate women's stories, and but like they're kind of a little bit connected, and I think it's really interesting like that it's split into two sets of three, and then you get to see the same sort of event through different people's perspectives. Like when, for instance, Alma talks about her relationship with Yaz, or like things in her life versus when Yaz then talks about them, and she gives you like this totally different perspective, and you're like, oh, actually that's how it is from the outside. So I think it's been really cool. um I think I mean, I hope we get to see like more of them in the end though, because it's kind of sad when you get to the end and you're like, oh, like I
super
don't
sad.
get to know more about this person, which is one thing that I thought. I don't know, but I think at the end they all come together. I'm not sure. But, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, another thing is like usually like since it's all like lumped together like LGBTQ, right? I kind of like think of it as like one entity. But like since this book has like split it up into this person, this person, this person, this person, you can see like it's not just like one thing LGBTQ. It's all individual people with their own like they have this challenge. This person has this, so there's this challenge. Like really like humanizing it and like making it specific to the individual. I think gives it much more meaning than just like, oh, like support this like grouped cause without like any actual like kind of personal experience behind it. It's like very like individualized and human.
Yeah. So when I first started this book, that's a good point, Joksy. I think when I first started this book, um, I kind of really started thinking a little bit about identity and like what really constitutes as like what it means to be part of a group or be. And I was listening to a lot of Jordan Peterson because he talks a lot about it from the perspective of psychiatry. And he was basically talking about how like we've come to a place where a lot of people start speaking about identity without actually really delving into like the philosophy of like what it like really means to like be, you know, because sometimes and that's something I actually when I walked into the book, that's why I was very um, skeptical of it because this book has offered me a period of time to like reflect on like why do I hold such a like views that I was like I don't really want to hold those views anymore. So like I think one of them I wanted to talk about was like what you Chokes was saying earlier, like feeling jaded towards like situations of this. So something that I personally felt kind of skeptical towards was like someone who like makes some sort of like a societal label be like the crux of their essence. So it's not like what it means to be like me is like has to be more than just the fact that I'm a man or just the fact that I'm Indian. Like it has to be more than that. That's too like limiting and too restricting. Like if my entire existence is just the fact that I'm a man, that's too little. So I feel like I sometimes get extremely like frustrated or like irritated when I hear people talking about some sort of like their entire being just through the lens of like this one specific label that is to some extent even like kind of just like uh on a spectrum, you know. It's not even like something that's so like defined like what it means to be straight or gay. Like it's not like some like 1-0 thing where it's like you can't be like all I am of my entire being is just I am just a gay male, I'm a straight male, like or whatever, you know, lesbian or blah. It's just very limiting. And then so I went into the book thinking like, okay, this is a little annoying because like, okay, like it's everybody. The way I had perceived the book was everyone was going to be like, oh, I'm a gay person and this is my whole life. It just this is all I am. But like not a single person has come off like that because no one's actual experience in life is like that. Like people have such complex and different, and that's what Chokshi was saying. Like it's not like LGBTQ is just one lived experience. Everyone in that has the same experience. Like everybody's different to so many different, you know, everything is different for every human being. It's not like one collective where everyone's part of that collective and everyone has the same experience. So it really, I went into the book thinking that's what it was going to be. You know, as I started reading, I was really happy that it also didn't take that, you know, direction where it was like, you know, where, yeah, so I actually, yeah.
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 So
I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, go say your point. I just wanted to say like we can start going like person by person, chapter by chapter.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, but I think what I was gonna say to that was I think oftentimes the reason that people might like say, oh, I am, like for instance, you're saying Indian and I am male, is because when other people see you, that may be what they reduce you to.
Yes.
Like in terms of, yeah, like in terms of like racism, sexism,
Yes.
homophobia, when they see you, like when people see me, they immediately think like, oh, that's a girl, and then they might like attach labels to me that I may not like personally identify with or may not think of as my whole existence, but that's how the world perceives you. So maybe that's why like when people are like, this is what I am,
Yes.
they're saying that that's how people perceive them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where I was also trying to understand it because you're right. If you live in a society where you are constantly viewed through that lens, at some point it must also alter the way you look at yourself. You know, which is why like I think in what Jordan Peterson, what I think what like he was saying, what a lot of was like once you start actually questioning like who am I actually, those like terms of just I am this, I am that start to like dissipate, you know? Like only like at the surface level are you those things. Because like even if you think about it, like like being a male or woman doesn't actually like it does alter the way you experience things, but what you experience is what you experience. Like it's very difficult to say I experienced that because I was male or because I was a woman. Like it's very hard to actually connect those two, like to 100%. Like this is 100% why I experienced this. You know, it's a lot of times just like your belief that that's why it happened that way. But I'm just saying like a lot of times I don't know. It just like I think the best way I think about this sometimes, like if I'm alone in the house, right? And my hair is long and I'm looking like a mess, I don't really necessarily think like, oh, like I'm ugly. Oh, I don't think those things. I only start thinking about those things when I feel that I'm in the presence of others. Like when I see other people looking at me, then I'm like, oh, how are they perceiving me? And then I start thinking about all the characteristics of myself that through their lens or through their perception. And that's what all these labels are. Like being a man, being a woman. If I was just in the house alone, no social interaction, I wouldn't even think about, oh, I'm a man, I'm a man, I'm a man. That concept only comes when I'm in the presence of others who view me as a man. You get what I'm saying? So that's what I think the idea is, just that like, yes, those are what like are the terms that are socially given to you, but like your identity is much deeper than just that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah. I agree with what you're saying. I feel like it really like I agree with what you're saying, but I also think like who you are by yourself in a house. And I guess like through reading this book, you get to see people that might just be defined as labels because they're maybe not properly represented. Even in like the books that we were reading this book club, you think like, oh, like Black, female, lesbian. And then you realize that I guess by reading it you understand their perspective, but I guess like it's also very important to understand that society like sees them as that, and that is very important to like how they're treated.
Yes.
And I think you can say like, oh, this happened to me because I am a woman or because I'm Black.
Yeah, I think even like in this book specifically too, I definitely see like this pattern where like a lot of the things that happen to these women are kind of out of their hands. It's because of like, you know, their parents immigrated here, their dad left, this or that. These are all things in their environment that are out of their hands. And those things like lead to them like living up in society in a certain way. So like it kind of shows you that part of their identity forming without them making that choice that this is my identity.
Yeah. Like a lot of your identity is not up to you, and your level of, I guess, like privilege and all the things that happen to you are really like out of your hand. I feel like, yeah.
Well, you can like identify these things and like change them, but like by default, like you will end up with a certain identity just because of where you were born, like just those circumstances above you.
Yeah. Should we go?
Let's start. You want to talk about Amma?
Yes.
Yeah. Is it Amma or Amma? I didn't know how to read it.
You know, I was like, Amma? Like what?
Amma.
I read it.
That's what I thought. Yeah, it might be Amma.
I thought it was maybe like Amma or something.
Yeah, I read it like Amma. I didn't say Amma because I was like, I don't think
it's too weird.
I could relate if I read it as Amma. It just wouldn't have worked for me. But I really doubt it's Amma. Like I don't think.
Yeah, I think it's. I've never heard that name before though, right? Like,
Amma.
Yeah, it could be any other form.
Than Amma.
Amma, but it could be, man. Maybe I'm wrong.
But yeah, what initial thoughts on her story? Like anything that you guys took away from it that you want to highlight?
I have to look through real quick again. She was the mother.
I think one thing that kind of stuck out about her was like her like dating life was pretty unique. Like she often talked about how she would like, you know, she would want to have sex with lots of different types of women. Like she, you know, had a really broad spectrum, but she would only like to like deal with them like once or twice, and then she'd be like done with them. She didn't want to have any like long-term relationships, and then like she'd get frustrated when like those people came back to her looking at her like as if like she owed them something.
Yeah.
So she definitely has this characteristic of wanting to be like very free flowing and not like tied down by anything.
Yeah, but she currently has had 2 partners for 10 years or something, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but I guess it's like more low key, so she's like okay with it. I think that's interesting because usually you think like, oh, maybe by the time someone is, I don't know, if she's in her mid 50s, like they'd want to just settle down with one person. But but she kind of like challenges that idea, and she's like not at all into that. And I think it's like interesting to contrast that with her daughter, who seems to be very monogamous, maybe because of like seeing her mother. I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't side note, I got to train my memory a little better. A little blank. I read her like a week ago, but I do remember like my perception of her changed after reading Dominique's perception. I ended up liking her a lot more after reading Dominique's entire experience. But I thought it was a really good introduction to the book. And I was going to ask you is what was your favorite and least favorite? I mean, you don't have to answer the least favorite, but just what were some of the characteristics you liked about Emma? Or,
Anything about it? I feel like I really liked like the realism with which she was like a feminist. You know, like you kind of see it like when she's like dealing with Nzinga later on, where like, you know, she has like certain feminist ideals, but like she's like very practical about like the way she does it. She also like lives that in her life. And then there's like one specific excerpt that I really like, which is where so you know, Amma, she's like living in this in that like kind of like commune kind of area. And then she really clowns how like everyone has like different needs. Like they're like, oh, this is how this should be, this is how that should be. She's like, you know, like it's really impossible to like have everyone's desires satisfied. And then I think she's also like self-aware of how like, you know, as a feminist, like she probably has certain preferences for like how she wants like men to be around the area. But at the same time, like, you know, she's like living it while not like, you know, like just putting it in everyone's face.
Yeah, I remember that section that you were talking about. I feel like she is like self-aware kind of in that way, maybe like she knows she's not like some of the other people who are like, oh, it needs to be this way, but she's kind of like, okay, like this is how they feel, and she's just kind of passing social commentary on it. I also think she's a really good friend, like with the Dominique thing. Like she didn't like, I don't know, she didn't tell her what to do or what not to do, but she was kind of there for her the whole time, and she actually went and visited her. But I guess that'll come later when we get to her.
Yeah.
What did you think about it, Gotham?
I just have some parts that I highlighted that I kind of wanted to maybe, those are the only things I can maybe really add to the conversation regarding her. Like on one page on 35, this was when like her father passed away, and she was like, she then regretted never telling him she loved him. He was her father, a good man, of course she loved him. She knew that now he was gone, he was a patriarch, but her mother was right when she said he's of his time and culture. And I guess like that's something that's like pretty, at least relatable for me. Just the idea of like as times change and as it keeps changing, you know, like what is considered okay and not constantly is changing. Being able to like look past that, I think, is sometimes difficult, you know, and I feel like she kind of battled with that where she wasn't really appreciative. I forgot for exactly what, but I remember she didn't really like her dad for some things that he had said or done. And, you know, it seems like when he passed away, she then, you know, kind of came to the realization that it's tough. You know, it is tough because it's like people grow up. I don't know how it works, but what are your thoughts on that? Like, at what point? Because I think each individual has to draw a line at where, okay, you can use your time and culture to explain some of your behaviors, but at some point it doesn't become okay anymore, you know? And I feel like where you draw that line is where it becomes difficult, because you can, I mean, you can do whatever, anyone can do anything, but it seems sometimes unrealistic to just be like, okay, well, you don't have this one belief that I certainly I have right now, and because of that, I will no longer speak to you or anything with you, you know? And I feel like that's like an impractical way to go about it, because you'll just kind of castrate half your family or just half the people in your life through that process, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially like as being like, you know, first generation in the US and stuff, like between us and our parents, like they're raised in such a different place. Like they might just hold some ideas that are like very different from us having grown up here. And like sometimes like, you know, I want to argue with them about certain things, but I also have to like kind of be understanding of the fact that they're from a totally different place and time. So like they might not necessarily understand some of the things that I argue with them about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's something that I've thought about a lot. I guess in terms of the family thing, or just in general, is like, to what extent can you say that, like with her father, she was okay with like everything that he did in the end, because she was like, okay, like this is the time and place that he was from. But yeah, I guess I don't have an answer to that, but I think it is definitely like a better feeling to just allow, like, to kind of let go and be like, okay, like he had these views because of the place and time that he was from, and maybe that just helped her heal after her father passed. So I guess that's like a case by case basis, right? Like,
Hmm.
to be like, okay, like I'm gonna forgive you for this, or I'm not gonna forgive you for this. Like, you need to decide where to draw the line. Maybe.
Yeah.
I thought when she said something like, so he was a communist or something, and she was like, he wanted equality for all of mankind, literally, like just for men. He didn't care about women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting question for sure.
Yeah.
It's super relevant.
Shall we move on? Do you guys have any more to add about her?
I think she's like kind of the central character. So I feel like maybe, yeah, like you were saying, she was a good introduction to the story, and she's kind of like background, because I think everybody is kind of connected to her in a way, or to her play. Because I know
Mhm.
even Carol later was like gonna go to her play. So
Hmm.
so I think she's kind of that introductory character where you're like, okay, this is the world that they live in, and then every other character, because it felt like some of the other characters had more, like, or maybe I don't remember because she was the first one, but they had like more fleshed out sort of stories.
Yeah, there's actually one more, I think, pretty important theme in her chapter, which is like kind of washing up or flipping, where like, you know, she used to be like have her own independent like play, and then eventually she like goes mainstream, and then she has like some friends like Sylvester and Georgie who like always like shit talk her on it, like, oh, like you didn't stay true to the cause, like you went mainstream with like these like main companies and let your play get acquired. And then that's I think also like another theme for like especially people who are trying to like change things in society is like at some point, like if you want to create change, you kind of have to like do it through like mainstream channels, which will kind of require you maybe to water down your message to some extent. But at the same time, if you're not willing to do that, you might just not ever like pop and become big. You won't be able to have that same impact. So is it worth it to like, you know, kind of sell out and at least be able to have some small impact, or is it better to just like stay small but like stay true to what you believe in?
And that's a super relevant question. Honestly, that's a awesome question. What do you think?
I mean, I think I kind of agree with Amma. Like, you know, you can like try not to, but at the end of the day, like, if you're afraid to use like, you know, go on CNN or whatever, like big channels, as much as you might hate them, like you kind of need them because they're so like built into society that if you want to change them, like you kind of have to go through them as your channel. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, I guess it's that whole like die a hero or live long to see yourself become a villain kind of
Yeah, kind of.
I
Yeah,
just like that movie again. Also, super fire. Honestly, I was shook at how good that movie is. It's like levels and levels and levels of just fucking ethics. Like it's just a beautiful ethics piece.
Wait, what movie?
Yeah.
Beautiful. But
Batman, Dark
yeah,
Knight.
The Dark Knight.
Mm-hmm.
Luis Fuego. But yeah, good question, Josie. Didi, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I like Choksi agree with Amma. I mean, I get why she did it, because she wanted to kind of, because she was saying initially not that many people would see her shows, or even if, like, even the people who saw were people who probably generally agreed with her themes, but she wanted to show kind of a wider audience like the stuff that she was about. But I think there's also merit in what Sylvester was saying. But I think it was interesting when from Yaz's perspective or something, because Amma was complaining about Sylvester, saying like, oh, he's unhappy because I'm finally successful or something. But then the way Yaz saw it was like, that's how you would talk about other people too before you were
Like just
successful.
right before, right?
Yeah, just right before.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe like part of the reason Sylvester say, I don't know, is like also because he hasn't had the opportunity to have a play on the national stage.
Yeah.
Like, to what extent is it like, okay,
Ego.
I'm staying true to myself versus I don't really have the opportunity to put it in the biggest theater in Britain.
Yeah, and like also like part of it is like she also makes a lot more money now. It's like that also makes like Sylvester more bitter because like, you know, now that she's successful, and then like that also leads into another theme that we kind of see, which is like the gentrification of where they live. So like they live in this town that's like super like, you know, like crusty or not crusty. I don't know what the right term is, right? But like it's like kind of like, you know, gritty. All right. And then like, you know, rich people start coming in and start getting gentrified. And then Ama is the one who like starts like critiquing like, oh, this is so whack, like I'm never gonna go to a wine bar. And then later on you see Yaz's story, and then she's like, yeah, like I mean she says all these complaints, but then like she's the one who like took me to a wine bar. Like she's the one who's like enabling this because now she has money and she's able to like spend them on these like expensive things that weren't really like part of the identity of the town that eventually to be gentrified. But yeah, I think both of those points kind of like lead us into Yaz's story, where you can kind of see how like from her perspective, like a lot of the things that Ahmad does, it seems kind of hypocritical.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was very interesting, like reading Amma's and then reading Yaz's, and just seeing like her calling Amma out on all her bullshit, basically.
Hella stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
And then like on another like I posted this in the chat, but like, you know, the second I flipped that second chapter, and then even after I started reading the third one, like the way that the author is able to like totally change the voice in each chapter to like fit the character's personality is actually like, I think that's like probably the most impressive thing to me about the writing so far. Like the period thing, like the way she kind of flows, that's one thing where like, it kind of even seems poetic in some scenes, like the way that she writes. But then just like the way that like, you know, she like kind of like enters the mind of each character, and like totally like the inner dialogue, everything just totally has a different feel that really like fits like their personality. I really like that about this book. I think that's one of the most impressive things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that's actually like very true. Like there are certain points where I'm like, geez, that's so poetic, like the way she, and I think, yeah, I don't know, like if she had actually put periods and put them all in the same line, like if that feel wouldn't be there necessarily, you know. But yeah, but she writes in a very flowy manner. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
I definitely like even now like I really remember the second half of the three stories. I feel like they resonated with me a lot more. And I also remember I feel like the first two didn't resonate with me like that. Maybe I was in the right headspace when I was reading it or something. But I do remember liking Yaz a little less than I liked Amma for some reason. It felt like she was very pretentious. But
yeah, that's a big theme. I mean, like you kind of see her as like kind of this like irreverent teen who just wants to like talk shit about everything, while like necessarily like, I mean, it's not like she's doing great things for society to change it, you know. She just like talks shit about everything. And then like even like the worst parts was later on, you know, when she like talks about like, oh, like since this person is like Muslim and black and like this,
oh yeah, that was like triggering.
She's the worst. So like you see it, like I mean the author isn't like, she's also I feel like from the author's point of view, like it's obviously like pretty dumb, right? So she's like calling it out. She's not like saying that she's right, but it's like interesting, right? Like you're a teenager, you're in this situation. Like, I mean, I can kind of see why she kind of became like this, right? Like having like the type of mother she has, like it leads her to think that way.
It was interesting at one point where she actually talked about how like, you know, just like having the title itself of having some, you know, being an underprivileged group is not enough. Like it's actually the experience that is matters, you know,
like the context,
just having the label.
Yeah.
And I think that's like a really important topic that I don't think that's what we were talking about earlier, where it's like identity is actually way deeper than just some labels, you know. And it's much easier to just be like, I'm underprivileged, I have these 4 labels, but that actually has nothing to do with your your experience itself within under that label. You know what I mean? And I think like when you start talking about that, there's no way to actually measure that. So the problem with that is once you start getting to that level, there's no longer this like privileged games, Olympics anymore that you can play, which I think a lot of people actually play. Like I may be wrong, but I have definitely, at least I guess, you know, I actually don't know. I don't know if many people play that, but from what I have seen when I would be online back in the days, like kind of like, I do feel like a lot of people undermine what other people have to say based on like where they play in that privilege game.
you know.
Yeah, like, oh, he's just a white male. Like, he
Yeah,
can't
like,
really understand.
yeah,
like,
like you
what
don't
I'm
understand
saying and
anything.
stuff.
Like everything you have to say is just undervalued because you don't. In the Olympics, you're not, gold in
Yeah.
privilege or something. I
Yeah.
don't know.
There is like a good point there. Like, so I know like later on, like they like it kind of talks how like she meets all these different friends, right? And then she eventually like she has this white friend who's from the rural country, and like they barely first let her in, but then eventually she like schools her in one moment where she's like, they have one friend who's like she's like in the embassy, like she's super rich, but she's also like a Muslim woman, and she's saying like, like there's people from the cuts like who are like super impoverished, like they could be like white, but like can you really say that they have less privilege like when you look at like their lives versus this life? Like you can't like you have to compare it on their experience, not just on like the labels, which is like pretty much what you were saying. But like after she says that, like it's like a humbling moment for Yaz too. She's like, wow, like like the teacher gets taught a lesson or whatever.
Which is
I feel like even when she said that, that was kind of annoying.
For sure. So here's one thing I didn't know actually. So in one part, I want to hear what you guys think about this. At one part, she was like, somebody had asked the Muslim woman like, why do you wear the hijab or whatever, and like she had answered politely, but apparently it was like something to be like offended or triggered by, and that was something I was kind of like I didn't really fully understand. I'm assuming there's probably like a lot of like background to a question like that, which is why someone may take that offensively. But I also like, can that question not be asked just straight out of curiosity? Like, is that not possible? Like for the sake of, I want to understand more about your culture. I want to understand more about where you come from. Why do you do this? I feel like it doesn't always have to be rooted in some racism, but I don't understand. Maybe not, maybe not. Like, I didn't know.
Yeah, I think it was maybe because this was the first time that she met her. Like maybe that's something that you can ask your friends rather than somebody like
a stranger.
Like the instant you met them, she came inside, she was like, why do you wear the hijab? I think it's also because like context, like just in general, probably a lot of people, like she was saying, like they see a hijab negatively, maybe.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. So is that what the presupposition is that you're
I maybe it's also like in your tone, if you're like, oh, why do you wear that, versus like genuine curiosity in somebody that you know versus like some random person that you don't know. Like it would be like, it's like if you just see a random person on the street, like people for some reason might think it's okay to just ask a woman who's wearing hijab, like, why are you wearing hijab? Like, but you wouldn't ask like some guy why he has a beard or something, like why somebody has glasses.
You could.
Yeah.
Like, the question is not whether you would or not. It's just like okay. So for example, this is what I'm trying to understand, because like I've been around a lot of kids and stuff recently, and like they just ask stupid questions, and like my feet are kind of messed up. So one of the kids had asked me like, why is your feet like that? And it took me a second, because I was like, okay, if someone older had said that, I would have taken that. I would have been like, damn, that's kind of mean. Like, why'd you say it like that? But then I was thinking about it from the perspective of the kid, and another kid had asked me like, why is your skin so brown? Or, like, and I was just like, at first my initial reaction is like, oh, that's fucked up. Like, you shouldn't be asking something like that. But then it took me a second. I was like, dude, like as a kid, like you don't really have those like, oh, like I'm coming at this from like a racist place. I'm kind of, it's genuine, just straight curiosity. Like, and there's no like, this is what I'm supposed to do. So even for a question like this, I feel like when someone can emulate that place of mindset when they ask a question like that, I genuinely, but I could be completely wrong. Maybe even when children ask that, it is coming from a place of racism or something. But I do feel like those questions are not.
So I think like with the children thing, it doesn't come from a place of racism. I think like maybe even in the way that they put it in the book, like she asked the question and then the girl, I'm forgetting her name. Was it Nanette or the other girl?
I think it was Waris, or I don't know.
Oh yeah. Whereas like she answered her and she didn't really seem too bothered by it. So maybe it was like Yaz thinking she knows all the right things to ask and answer somebody, like in every context, and she's like, oh, that's not something that you should ever ask somebody, whereas was less bothered by it. And then Yaz was kind of surprised, because I think even with like the thinking about people's privilege and stuff, she doesn't think about context. Like even in this case, she didn't really think about context. So maybe it was to show that as well. Like I think probably Waris didn't see it as a negative question, because she, like Courtney, I think her
Yeah.
name was, like, probably was just like generally like she was just like, oh, like,
Yeah.
why do you wear that? And she didn't like press it afterwards. She wasn't like, oh, like something more. She was
Yeah,
just like,
that
oh,
Yeah.
okay.
that would be annoying for sure.
That would be annoying. Yeah. So she was just like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, because I was thinking about that. I was like, oh, maybe like I should never ask someone questions like that. But I didn't know because I was like, that sucks too. Because like what I want to learn more about other people. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think context is really important. Like if it was just somebody that you saw randomly in line at like a store or something, it might be a weird thing to ask them.
Yeah. And then like even like when she's asked about it, like she says like it's actually like number one reason is like political and the number two reason is cultural. So like part of the reason why she wears it is actually because like she believes in the right for her to wear it as a choice.
Yeah.
Rather
Yeah.
than even like oh this is my culture, I have to wear it. It's
Yeah.
it's like very different from just like wearing it just because that's like what you're told to do versus like I'm wearing it because I'm making a statement that I can wear what I want.
Yeah. Because I think it's very like current culturally relevant because of like what's happening in France right now, like where they're trying to ban
with being able to wear hijabs.
hijab in like public place or school places.
Wait,
for
where is this? Sorry, I missed it.
In France.
What?
They're trying
That's
to.
nuts.
Yeah. So it's really like it's a really big thing in the world. I feel like for people to see someone in a hijab and perceive it in a certain way. So yeah, so maybe that's why like. So I feel like that's the thing about Yaz though, is she feels like she has all the answers to everything. She sees her friend in a hijab and she's like, okay, she's definitely gonna perceive it this way, but like she didn't. So yeah.
Okay, I have another question for y'all. On page 69, this is when they all pulled up to Ninette's house. And the line says, Ninette apologized for her mother's ostentatious taste in home decor, not for her wealth. And I was just like, is that something like,
like one should be expected to apologize for?
Like, are you supposed to just go about the world and be like, hey, I'm sorry that I'm rich? Like, I was like, interesting. Like,
I think it's also,
the thing is, for me in my head, I could be completely wrong, but I don't know. To me, Yaz doesn't represent just an individual person. I feel like that's a large subset of the population's mindset, but I could be wrong. But I think especially with that wealth thing, like a lot of people take it like if you have, done something for yourself, like you should, like, I don't know, feel bad or something. Like, I don't know what the point is, like, but I don't know. Yeah. What do you guys think?
I thought it was interesting because Yaz herself is like fairly wealthy. At least her dad is. So I don't know how much he financially like provides for her, but he's like a TV star or something. Right?
Yeah. I mean, one of them even talked about like having an allowance that they never tell anyone else about. I don't know if it's one of those kids or if it's from a different chapter, but I remember that being mentioned. Like, yeah, she gets like a check from her like family like every this, but she never mentions.
I think that is this one. I think that is in this.
I think that is.
It might be Yaz. It might be one of her friends.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's all about like appearing to be like that independent like go getter.
Yeah.
Not wanting to admit any flaws. Yeah,
as if anybody in this society has like truly come up from the ground up, like even people who have quote unquote come up from the ground up like are still appreciative of so many people in their lives for paving the way for them, like even people who really came up from the mud are like, I would not be here if not for all these people. Like nobody genuinely makes it up alone. That is literally
and it's like a line you can draw, right? Like you can say like, oh, you were born into wealth, right? But like someone who was born into the third world can say you were born into clean water.
Yeah,
where do you draw the line there?
Yeah,
but I think what? Yeah, go for it. I'm trying to change the topic after, so if you want to continue this point, then go.
Okay, yeah, I think the only thing I would say is like they said. I think privilege is when I think about it, I think about privilege as gratefulness, and I think like understanding your privilege and where you come from is essential for I think it's facts. Like I 100% should, everyone should, not everyone, but whatever. Like I feel like it's very important to kind of just be like, damn, I am very grateful for all these things that have, helped me get to where I am today. But I think comparing like who's more privileged, that's just like a game that will never lead to any benefits. But I think it's very important. Everyone should try to at least be like, hey, like I do acknowledge all these things that have helped me, but not be like, I have less than you, like you have more than me. It's nuts. That's like
That's well said. It's really more about understanding and reflecting on your privilege and having gratitude
Yeah.
more than like evaluating objectively. Oh, I have this much privilege. I have that much privilege.
That's just so goofy. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was wanted to say something else about Yaz, but Loki, I think we should just move on to Dominique
Yeah.
because we still have a bunch to get through.
Yes. I have
Yeah.
a lot. Yes. Okay. So Dominique, if you don't mind, I'll go first. I love Dominique. I thought she was a badass. And I thought her experience and what she had gone through was kind of really interesting. And I think one thing that it brings into light, and I think people don't talk about enough, is like I think like in society right now, it's very common to be like men are super toxic, this and that, and oh like if I go into that's why like I've seen a lot of people who are like, oh, I want to just date women, like I don't not I don't want to screw men, like fuck all men, men are trash or whatever, like I'd rather just date girls or something. But I feel like the idea that people like toxic tendencies lay in all of us, and it's not like something you can just escape from one gender or another. I think Nzinga represent also kind of showed that. But yeah, what about you guys?
Yeah, I think this was the first like heavy chapter, right?
Yeah.
Like this was the first one where I was reading and I was like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my
For
god.
sure.
And I was like, oh no. Like it was so, I feel like she really I don't know what it was. Maybe I should go back and look, but like when you see her take her to when you see Nzinga take Dominique to America and then you see like what's happening to her. I don't know what the author used. Maybe she didn't use periods, or like if I felt like I was like rushing through. I felt stressed reading it. Like whatever.
For sure.
I don't know what literary device she used, but you like feel this feeling of like dread, and you're like, oh my god.
For sure. Actually, yeah, I think throughout the author did a really good job, because even in the very beginning, like when you first meet Nzinga, I kind of also felt the feeling of Dominique that like, oh wow, like she seems really cool. Like I was actually even impressed by her as well. And then like I felt like that transformation to like you see a couple things, you're like, man, that's kind of questionable, and then
it's a little
you
weird.
really feel it progress. Like that gradient is done really well. Like we really get into the ride with Dominique.
Yeah, and it was like a slow progression, and I feel like she did a good job of kind of representing how oftentimes it is in real life as well. Like a lot of times, I think this is one common thing that I had learned, and it kind of shifted my perspective. And a lot of people are like, hey, like when you're talking to someone who is in a abusive relationship or whatever the word you want to use, it's like it's very easy to be like, dude, like what are you doing? Like that's not good for you, like get out of it. But it's like when you're in that situation, it's like completely different, because you have that like goggle of like, but all of this good stuff is there as well. It's not just the bad things. But when someone tells you about the abusive stuff, you don't see all the good in that person as well. And I feel like the way she had done it, it made sure it highlighted the good in Nzinga. Like she's not like just this off, like nobody's just one brick of evil, like nobody exists like that. Like everyone's a pretty complex character. So even her, like it really made you like, I feel like for someone else who may have never, seen someone go through something like that, or it really went through that process of like people can really appear amazing in the beginning, but it's only when you start saying no to them do other sides of them come out, and I think she did a really awesome job of really not being like, oh, this person just awful every single part of the way, like she's just a terrible human being, because that's never how it really is,
Yeah, I think it really showed the toxic, like emotionally abusive relationship really well. Because I feel like a lot of times when it is portrayed, or when you hear about it from the outside, you're like, well, obviously, like I don't know why they did that. That would never be me. And then you see this and you're like, here's Dominique, who's this like confident, like amazing person on her, like by herself, and then this still happened to her.
Yeah. And even like another thing you mentioned, which is like they don't even like really make Nzinga like seem like this like behemoth of evil, they kind of even like paint her as a complex character, and like she actually like she's not like trying to be evil, like it's just like how she is. Like she actually believes that she's like doing the right thing when she's like taking all these controlling actions for Dominique. But then like when we see it from the outside, we're like, damn, she's actually like crazy, like bad shit insane.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really sad. Like her story was really sad too, because they gave us a backstory on Nzinga, and you're like, shit.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. And I think like the whole idea of them being in a cult definitely gave it a more eerie feeling as opposed to them just being in the city or something, you know? Because that really makes you
Yeah,
feel a
I
lot more
looked.
isolated.
Yeah, like I looked those up. The women's
Mm.
Yeah,
communities.
WIMMIN.
Yeah, it was a
yeah.
really big thing. And apparently they're like in the 70s and the 80s, but they're dying down now because it's they're finding it difficult to like recruit new people. But they were like a much bigger thing back then.
Mm.
Wow, I'm surprised it's difficult to recruit new people now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of makes sense.
Like it's
Okay.
interesting.
Like
That-
women now, like yeah, like I don't know if I'd want to go live in a place where you build houses. I don't know what they do. You
But now it's
know
like
what I
more
mean?
like socially acceptable to like step away from the norm. You know, like I feel like
Oh,
before
like
it's
that.
like you have to do. You know, now it's more like okay, yeah, you know, I'm gonna try it out. Like it's not like a
Mm.
I don't know.
Hmm.
But yeah, it could be yeah.
I
Interesting.
don't know. Yeah, I guess they just couldn't find a way to make it appeal to this generation.
Mm.
But
So
definitely,
in
I didn't feel like it
conclusion, men
appealed to me.
are
in the movie.
indeed
Huh?
important in survival.
I don't know about that, but
Okay, excuse me. I think it's disrespectful when people say women don't need men to survive. I think that's extremely disrespectful.
I think disrespectful is the wrong.
No, I think it's like it's no, I think disrespectful is a great word because I feel like if that same thing was said the other way, like there would be a different like intonation on what's being said, you know? Like I think it's actually a pretty messed up thing to say. Not from like an emotional way of saying it, but just like the ethical implication of what it means. Like not like oh I'm emotionally hurt that they said that. It's just like the ethical implication of saying an entire gender is not needed is like saying one race is not needed, if not worse, you know? And but like one gets a pass, which is like ethically it's
yeah,
very,
but
very insanely wrong. Like it's crazy that people get past with saying that. Because if you
I
took that
think-
same thing with any other situation, you would be like castrated from every social circle in the world.
yes, but I think like context is very important. And in the patriarchal society we live in, like saying something like that about men is very different than saying something about women because men are in positions of power. So
Yes, no, I understand. No, I do get what you're saying, but you do get what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying. I do think, and I think that's what this chapter shows is that like Nzinga's idea of being like I don't know, like she would say that she didn't even want to wear black underwear because of some reason, or what was it? Yes.
No, it's because like you like since you're black, then like if you wear black underwear, that means you're putting your private parts on something black, like it's like disrespect or something. Like
Oh
that.
yeah, see something like that. Like I feel like yeah, like you shouldn't say things or do things like that. But I think yeah, I think that's different than your point. So
Yeah.
My man got triggered, bro.
I've heard it so many times. I'm like, how do people?
No, I get it.
How can people say this and just like it's fine, you know? Like, but yeah, I digress. Okay, so we move on.
Yeah, let's go. Anything else? Any more points about Dominique though?
Not really.
mm-mm.
I'm glad she got out. I am happy she got out.
Yeah. Shout out to that happy ending. I'm down with it.
Yeah.
I like how that one
Yeah,
ended.
it's so cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but
I think that's interesting is how I feel like most of them had like you forward to the end and they have a happy ending except I think Letitia, or maybe
No, it seemed pretty good.
Even Letitia kind of had it. Like I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't hella happy, but like it was going good. It was getting better.
It was the first derivative was positive.
Yeah, maybe she's just like
All right, math man.
I think it's because for everybody else they had like one they had like a partner by the end, and then it felt like super neatly tied up at the end, and it was like okay, like here is her wife and here are their two daughters, and then like for the other two was like that too, but Letitia still felt like, okay, like it's going up, but it's not like completely there yet, maybe.
Like a lot of Letitia's story feels more about like this support system to like raise her kids, right? Like the fact that like she doesn't have these father figures, like she just has like all these baby daddies that are like deadbeat useless. And at the end, she finally like her dad comes back, and like her dad is the one that left her, right? So like that kind of brings that first circle that her dad first of all comes back, and on top of that, he can also act as a father to all her children who don't have dads.
Okay, no, actually, no. I remember why I felt upset when I read the end of hers. I forgot that her dad came back.
Should we get to it when we talk about her? Okay, we're just
let's go to
my bad.
Okay, Carol. Thoughts on Carol?
Dude,
this was the first one that was very
it was really heavy, dude.
Yeah, definitely it was. I mean, I think this entire chapter was pretty heavy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so okay, so I do have a lot to even ask Aditi about this.
Yeah, that Nzinga part was super heavy, and then we went into this, and I was like, dude, like I had to stop and think. Like I was just, dude.
Yeah, I think this chapter definitely like, and I was talking about this in earlier books. Like something that books are really awesome for is kind of just like that self-reflection where you read, and I think this whole chapter really just like really brought to my eyes like how I think small behavioral things that I have done like from a young age, like even though it may not in itself be a big deal, I feel like they all play a role into like something that feeds into a much bigger problem like around the world, So it could be small things like, oh, like that girl's a 10, that girl's a 5, like small things that like eventually add up to something where it's like people not being seen as human beings and as seen as an object, or being seen as something that is usable, and I think this chapter really made me like think like, dang, like what are all the mindsets that I have had that I also feed into this? Because I think one thing that a lot of people do is like they distance themselves like as if like they're like perfect human beings, and like the only reason like a lot of issues happen are because like other people are the problem, but they're perfect, and I feel like it's never actually really like that. And I feel like out of all the problems in the world, like I would love like like sexual assault is, I feel like, one of the ones that I would put high on the list. Like I would feel like we live in a much better world if that was, but I realize that I am also a very much big part of the problem, And so this chapter was definitely pretty like heavy for me. What about you guys?
Yeah, I can agree with you. Like I think like reading some of this stuff like as a dude, like definitely like made me question some of the things that I do. Like subtle things that I think are useless, like reading it from like some of these characters' perspective, I'm like, dude, yeah, definitely made me feel a little guilty at times. And then I guess just another point. So this happened in like the Nzinga parts, and also like during this chapter, like when she was getting like raped, and like when Nzinga was cornering her, like the way the author writes is like she'll like really like narrow down the page so it's only those words when like those really like fucked up things are going on, and I think that really like it really like makes it much more gripping because like all you see is those words and you're just like, damn, like I don't know. I think that like writing choice was like pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought this chapter was super, or this section was super heavy too, and I feel like, I don't know, just like all of it, like from the beginning and like the horrific rape that happened to her when she was 13, to her feeling like it was kind of her fault, and then to like, I don't know, her having to grow up and like how deeply it still sort of affects her, and how she still hasn't told anybody, and how she like thinks about it all the time. Hi. 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 What's your name? Sanvi. Hi, Sanvi. So cute.
Okay, give me one second.
But yeah, I don't know, really, really heavy chapter, and it's so fucked because that guy Trey then like makes a reappearance. I guess.
Yeah, dude, I really hated
like
that
he's
guy.
still on the same. Just,
nonsense.
I don't know. Yeah, it's really fucked up.
Yeah, and I think Chokesy, based on what you said, I actually just wanted to see that pattern appear in other parts, and it actually does. So like on page 116, which is even before we're even introduced to the whole thing, it does that thing where it like, trims down. And I think like now looking at it, I feel like that's a really good analogy of kind of like how people in these situations sometimes like go through their lives, where it's like, and they even mention that in the book, where it's like, it's not even on the top of your mind sometimes, you're just going through your day and like all of a sudden it just hits you, you're like, dang, like, boom, I'm back into that one place. And I feel like there's certain times in the chapter where you kind of like have a premonition, like that something's about to happen. You probably know what it is. And I feel like it is because of, and now that you mentioned it, Chokesy, like the way that slimming of the lines kind of end up. But
Yeah.
I think this is one question I wanted to kind of ask Aditi. Kind of like, I guess like, okay, so this is, okay, let me just say a couple things. I just want to say like what was on my mind when I was reading this. Okay, so I was thinking about a few things. So one of the things was like this idea of like telling, like I've been around children a lot, so I've really just been thinking a lot about how people parent and stuff. And I feel like there's subtle things about like telling girls to like, cover up or like make sure that they're safe or like really emphasizing that. But I completely agree that that same emphasis on telling sons to like not do weird shit is not there. I feel like that's one thing I definitely have noticed. Like that same emphasis is definitely not present. And so I feel like as long, like, however much you have to do the other one, if not anything, I feel like there should be more emphasis on that. That's one thing I was just thinking about when I was reading this. Cause I guess like the way I was kind of reading is like, what can we as individuals do to like do our part in not continuing this? Because that's all we can do, like I feel like there's so much like just reading, we know this stuff is happening, but it's like what as individuals can we do to, we can't like, we're not superheroes, we can't just be like, everyone stop it immediately, like what do we do as individuals to, you know I guess like I think one thing I've seen in personal experience is like being somebody who people feel comfortable talking to, where you're not like judging them. I think that's a big one, where you're not like, like as soon as somebody tells you, you shouldn't be like, where were you, what were you doing? I think just like listening, I think that's one thing I've heard is a good thing to do. You have any other suggestions?
Like as a man in society.
Yes.
um, I don't know. I think the thing is like you see something like what this guy did. Like him and his friends got together and they blindfolded a little girl. Like clearly, like I would never do that. Like that's wrong. Like, and I think that's the issue is when people think about like rape or assault, they see it from a lens of like, oh, it's this evil thing that I would never do because I have never blindfolded a 13-year-old girl, Whereas a lot of the reason like rape culture and like, I don't know, general disparity between the sexes exists is like much more low key things. And I feel like that's come out a lot with the Me Too movement and stuff, is like guys in position of power, even if like a girl never said like no explicitly, like misusing your power or your position of authority and doing things that don't seem explicitly wrong. Like I feel like that's something that regular guys can think. Like if you're like a pedophile or something, then like well fuck, like I don't like. I feel like yes, like everybody knows that that's bad is the thing, but like people don't know about like
the smaller ones,
like smaller things that are bad. Like what happened here was like horrific, and that everybody can read this and be like, oh wow, that's really bad. But it's littler things where like, oh, somebody is drunk and you're just hanging out with them, and then you're like, oh, one thing just sort of led to another. But it's like you need to really think like, is this something that person wanted to do? Is this something both people wanted to do? So I think that's like, I don't know, it's important.
Yeah, and then I think that a little annoying part of that is like I've heard like girls say like that they get annoyed like when like Like I've
Mm.
literally heard this word for word.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
get
yeah.
annoyed when guys like ask them if they can kiss them and stuff. They're like,
Yeah,
why you
yeah,
gotta be
yeah,
such like a pussy about it? Just like do it,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I feel like and even with like this is one thing I was actually listening to something about. It was really interesting. It was like a sexual expert talking about like healthy sex, and she was talking about how like now in culture like it is completely normalized. Like kinks are like normalized. Like where like vanilla sex is like even the fact that call it
It's
vanilla
called
sex like looked down
yeah.
upon, you know, as if like that's not like enough, and as if like kinks are like what is needed. So she was talking about how like nowadays a lot of girls like are into the fact that they want to be choked just because of like the idea that they should like it, you know, which then makes them actually like it. But it's like the idea is that those things are not something that 14-year-olds should be like starting sex with, you know, or like the ideas that these kinks are like something that you need to like actually be in a pretty intimate level, or at least like really have good communication with them, because you don't want to be having sex with someone for the first time and then start choking you, you know, like, but that happens all the time. Like that's not something that's like rare. So it's like that whole idea is like it really got me like thinking like dang, like a lot of the way both genders I think approach it can oftentimes lead to a lot of I'm not, you know what I mean, like I feel like the um, ideologies that go into how people even get into that situation at first, like I feel like the whole idea like even at that party and stuff, like where like the whole idea of coming there is to like oogle other people and be like, oh, you're an object, like I want to have sex with you to feel like to make myself feel good. I feel like coming into the situation with even that mindset leads a lot more to these type of things where it's like you as a person don't matter, I just want to make myself feel better, you know. And I just think
But like when we like see her perspective at the party though, right? Like even when he's taking her out, he's saying like, oh, like her thoughts are very romantic and like idealistic. Like she's not
yes,
thinking like, oh, I want to have sex with you. He's the
yeah,
one who's like who has that mindset. So like
yeah,
there's a difference there.
yeah, no, I'm not
And
talking
then
about
like
her, I'm talking about the other girls at the party. Like I'm just saying like
yeah.
that like that that environment is created to do that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
where like an environment is created where like people are not seen as people and they're seen as sexual beings, and it's like that's all you are seen as. And when you're done seeing in that light, people oftentimes just don't talk to you anymore. You're not a person after that, you know, like you exist in that moment to give sexual pleasure, that's it. And I feel like that entire viewing of other human beings oftentimes leads to this, but I think that mindset is present on both genders, you know,
Mm,
like where like
yeah.
people are minimized.
Yeah. Like I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like that's something where like as individuals we have to like vote with our presence, you know. So like if you see like a party where like that's what the vibe is like, you know, or like if you're on Tinder where that's like usually what the type of stuff that goes down, right? You're kind of like enabling those
Exactly,
platforms or those
exactly.
areas. So if you really believe that like this certain thing is like objectifying the other gender, then you should just not contribute to it and do
Yes,
your best to like focus on things where you can really get to know people.
yeah, I agree, I 100% agree with you. I think
Yeah.
that's a step definitely in a direction.
Yeah. And I think like also in those situations, like you need to try to remember like you're mentioning like seeing people as like reduced to a sexual object and then forgetting about them, like maybe like trying to remember that they are a person.
Of course, yeah.
Like yeah. So I guess that's just no, I guess that's just how like I get what you're saying, but I guess that's the only way you can like combat that.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah.
especially if you want to still be in that environment. Yeah,
Yeah, like if you want to still be in that environment, like I don't know if you want to go.
yeah,
Yeah.
As an individual, that's kind of like the steps you have to take in
Yeah,
order to
that's
like
just what
fight
you have to
back.
do. Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
And
But
yeah, I was actually reading a little bit about Tinder and like the psychological effects it has on people, and how like an hour on Tinder, like a day for a while, like completely shifts the way you look at people, because it's like, you know, like it's just the idea like, oh, like not cute, left, like like it's completely like, I don't know, it's crazy. Like I don't know, like anytime I've used it, I myself have noticed like a change in how I view people. You know, it's very like this is all you are, left right, and you look at people in real life and you know it kind of carries on to there too, where but yeah, it just I don't know, yeah, I think yeah, too much, but I guess we just, you know, unlearning all of that and seeing people now as human beings, I think is the best way. We ourselves can benefit our own lives. You know, there's just so many more connections that we all can have with human beings if it's not based on the fact that they're fine with, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so next, shall we move on?
I mean, do we want to talk anything else about Dominique after that scene? Like how she grows into a woman, like how she becomes super career oriented, like
Carol?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Carol,
there's
right?
a lot more to her story. Or yeah, Carol, I mean, like
Right.
yeah, what are your thoughts on like what happens to her after that, how it shapes her, like how her story kind of ends?
Yeah, what are your I like thought it was very interesting, you know, I want to see what you guys think about like her kind of transforming herself in a way, like trying to just blend in with everybody when she went to Oxford. Like do you guys believe she lost herself, or she's just presenting a different part of herself when she started talking differently and she like took off her lashes and her nails and started dressing differently? She
I
started
think
eating
like
food, everything.
yeah, like maybe like one explanation. I'm not like a psychotherapist or anything, but like maybe like the fact that like, you know, she had this like really traumatic experience made her want to change and become a different person who's like totally different from that. So she can like further escape from that Carol that had to experience that, and she can kind of like reinvent herself into a new person and kind of start fresh.
Mm-hmm.
Like that could be one way that kind of shaped her.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. But and I also think it's like very interesting because I think that's something that like people talk about now too, like assimilating, like at what point does assimilating mean like losing who you are, and like to what level is it expected that you should assimilate to like the dominant culture? Like she goes to Oxford, she's around all these white people and she has to start talking white, like dressing white, like if she hadn't done those things, like would she have been successful? And I don't know, I think it's just very interesting, like to
Yeah,
think about. Like is she still
definitely.
herself, and who is she now? And like I don't know. Yeah.
But I mean, even from the beginning, like, who is she? You know, what does it even mean to be from the beginning? You know,
Mm.
I guess is another question to throw in there. Like when you say like, let's forget what exactly you said. When basically
Well,
like,
I think like the idea is like when you're like born into a certain culture. So for her, it's like Nigerian. Am I right? Or
Yeah.
but like you know, for us, right, we're born into like Indian culture, right? And like it's like a shared culture, but the culture is like it only exists when the individuals of the culture exist, right? So like the moment like all people of like in Indian culture, for example, like stop like buying to that culture and say they all become like American, right? That culture is totally gone. So it's like a matter of like, you know, it isn't you, right? You're an individual separate from culture, but like, do you value your culture? Do you think it's important to preserve your culture? If not, then yeah, it doesn't matter to it's totally assimilate into another culture and have it lost. But if you do like, I guess like respect it, or not even necessarily respect, but if you like really value preserving it, then like you don't want to totally assimilate. You want to like keep like those important parts of your culture that you think like
mm,
are true, are like part of your identity, an important part of your identity.
yes, I have one thing to add to that. I think like let's say quote unquote Indians eat with their hands or something. That's like something that's like objectifiable. So like I eat with my hands. That's something that you can like no matter where you go, that's something you do. That's something that's a fact. I sing Carnatic music. That's a fact. But to then say that these certain things are inherent to a certain being. So like if I do these X amount of things, I am Indian. I think that's where like the I would personally disagree. Like it's not like you do these X number of things, you are Indian. If you do X minus one number of things, you are no longer Indian. I feel like that connection can not actually be quantifiable. Like, who is there to judge? Like, you have to do these number of things to be this. And if you do it differently, like, why can't I do all quote unquote American things but still be Indian? Like, that should still be a possibility. Like, it cannot just be like the number of things that you do that's part of that culture, which is why I feel like when you say like, oh, this person like changes from like culture to culture, it's kind of hard to what that actually means, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's a fair point, and like I do agree that like you know like it's not like there's like a certain exact threshold of like okay you need to do this many Indian things to be considered like part of the Indian culture, right? I think it's more a matter of you know, like you know if you just do like one thing, like say you only eat with your hands, then like that's not like as recognizable as Indian. But like you know, well, like once you like, it's like a couple of things, like you know here and there, you know maybe you're like frugal with money, that's kind of Indian thing. Like you know you have a couple of these things, right? And then like as a parent, you see that in your child and you're like, okay, yeah, like he still has some of those Indian values, but like eventually like you know, it might still be there, right? But it might be so small that like her mom doesn't recognize her anymore as like Nigerian because she doesn't see all those like Nigerian traits. It's like very small. So it is a matter of perception, right? It's like to a person evaluating it, like to her mother, right, who's like very Nigerian, then like she's like, wow, my child isn't Nigerian at all. But like maybe to her friends in Oxford, she's like, wow, like she is pretty different. She does like all these things that we don't do. So she still is kind of has that Nigerian flavor to her.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not something you can objectively say like you need to do this many things to be considered part of that culture. It's more something relative to like the person who's evaluating.
Yes, and I think that's why it becomes sometimes these labels can sometimes become dangerous because it's used as a way to be like, you know, as if people have the power to give someone else's their identity, like as if like the parent can say you are Nigerian or you are Indian or you're not Indian enough, or like I feel like those all things are like they actually beg much deeper questions of like what it even means to be that, as opposed to just taking it at surface level and being like, oh yeah, I changed, I'm not that anymore,
Yeah.
So which is why like I feel like the one concept that is continuous through all of these is like all of these characters change, and it really like begs questions about like what is it like identity. I think one theme that I definitely keep seeing from character to character is like who are they as they change, like do they change themselves, like what does it mean to be this person? But yeah, no, you're right. I'm glad you brought up her come up too, because she also should not be minimized. And that's one thing I think I'm really glad you brought that up. Like no one should be minimized to just like one event in their life or anything, like anybody. So it's awesome that, they still continue her story after. It's not like it stops there, like, oh, this whole person just, this life is much more than that. It's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
And sorry, I just want to say one more thing about this because I don't know, it's been on my mind. Like I just feel like one thing society also, not society, but one thing I have seen in my tiny sliver of experience with society is that oftentimes like sexual assault, especially in my experience with Indian culture, is they make it as if it's like the worst thing that can happen to a human being ever. So what it does is it puts more pressure on the victim of like needing to hide it or needing to act like it never happened, or even allowing it to affect them to like an enormous degree, because like society negatively like puts pressure on the person who was actually impacted by that situation, instead of impacting the person who actually did it. Like a lot of times the pressure of it happening to you is felt by society more than like you individually as a person feel it. Like I feel like it's like you yourself already feel it a lot because it definitely probably sucks, but then on top of that, society makes you feel even worse about it happening to you. And I feel like a lot of times like that part of it, like if that part was at least amended, then at least it wouldn't be like, oh, like that is all I am, like, oh, like, oh, this has been stolen from me, like, oh, like I have been robbed of my childhood or this or that. It's like it doesn't need to be that. It's a big deal, but it doesn't need to be like life ending as some people make it out to be. Where like I remember I was talking to my mom one time and she was just telling me how like in India, like a lot of people like would kill themselves after something like that, because they're like, to them there's like no point of living after something like that happens. And I feel like characters like this are very, and then a lot of women everywhere are very like powerful examples of people who have continued and done amazing things. It's not like, you don't have to let that define you and end you. I think that's another thing. That's why like, listening and being there for people and not judging, I think that's a reason that would be helpful in that aspect.
Yeah, I think like the reason that it's like negative and that people end their lives is because like it's viewed through like a guilty, like you're riddled with guilt because because it's made to feel like it's the victim's fault that it happened, rather than the perpetrator. So I think like when society makes a big deal out of it, it's like it's because it might feel like they're putting the blame on the victim. So I definitely think that should be changed, and it should be seen as something that like that the person, like the perpetrator, did, rather than that happened to the victim. For sure. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. Did you guys have anything else to add about Carol?
Probably could be some things, but I think we can move on to Boomy.
Yeah, we should really move on.
Yes. Okay. Boomy or Bummy.
I like Boomy more.
Yeah, I like Boomy too.
Yeah, so she has a pretty rough upbringing. Her father dies. She's from Nigeria, right? And then she travels with her mom. I think her mom's like, or I guess her father's like brother, like they hella screw him over, like take the land, like kick him out. I know there's like a lot of like talk about how like people like colonize Africa and they drain all of its resources and then they don't help Africa itself. That's like one theme that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
And then she moves up, she meets her husband, they move up and they have their daughter. The husband passes away, so she's a single mother. And then eventually, like her daughter, you know, she goes through her traumatic experience. She eventually, like, you know, she goes to Oxford, she switches up, and then the mom is kind of like left alone with, she starts her own cleaning service. And then through that, she meets this one woman, so she starts having a relationship with him, and then she meets up with this dude. And then, you know, she kind of has like a pretty non-traditional life after, but I think at the end she feels pretty happy and content with it when she like expected not to.
Yeah, I just felt like it was so sad, like when her and her husband, and they came to America with like all these hopes and with like so much education. Like he had a PhD, and then like he couldn't find any job.
Yeah, they had to be a cab driver and a cleaner.
Yeah. Like I wonder if they ever felt like regret for coming. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. It was definitely, I think it was nice that her story at the end also was kind of like happy.
Yeah. And like even speaking of that, there's like one scene that I thought was pretty awesome where like after her husband passes away, like I feel like this like identity of being a cab driver and cleaner like starts to ingrain itself in them, and they like kind of forget the fact that yeah, we're actually really smart individuals who have like these great degrees. And there's a moment where she's like, and then I realized like I am good at math. I can do this. I should be owning my own business. I shouldn't be like just cleaning and like without doing all this stuff. So like she has that moment of realization where she remembers her like true identity and her true capabilities that she's like forgotten after being like just like forced to do this like way lower labor than like what she was really like what her potential was. Like good to see her feel empowered after going through all that.
Yeah, I was actually one of the podcasts that Deepthi had suggested me a while back. I was listening to this Asian woman who had gotten her PhD in China, and she had moved to America, and she was just talking about her experiences, and she was just talking about how like when she came here, like people would like make fun of her for not really understanding English and stuff, and she was just like in her head she was like, I'm one of the best in my entire country at chemistry. Like I really am like a very educated person, but yet when I come here, I feel really stupid. I feel dumb. Like, I feel like that's like a experience of many people who like come to America and then are made to feel very low, no matter what their education is or whatever, whatever their skill sets are. And so I thought it was very similar, also seeing that her experience was similar to that as well.
Yeah.
And that's tough. Yeah. Honestly, that sucks. That sucks. Like that seems to be something that's similar that people who come to this country feel.
That everybody that, like, for instance, who would sit in the dad's car would think that they were better than him, which first of all is fucked up, because just because somebody's a cab driver and you're sitting in their cab doesn't mean that you're better than them. And second of all, he like has a PhD, and like he's a human being with like who's so much more than that, and like everybody would just reduce him to like thinking that they were better than him. And to the mom too, like I don't know.
Yeah,
that seems to be a similar theme in a lot of human interactions, and just all the books that we've read that deal with that, where it's like there's a lack of respect for just somebody being human, like before all the other. And that comes to also all the things that happen with women, like seeing them as a person before seeing them as a woman, or blah blah blah. It's like you're a person, like just like me, we're human. Yes. But she's awesome though. I feel like she's very badass. Like for her to like, to have that entrepreneurship mindset, to be like, okay, instead of me just cleaning, I'm gonna hire people to clean. That's super badass.
Yeah. I think like another big theme is like after the husband dies, right? She often mentions like her daughter Carol was like the only thing she had, and then eventually she like kind of loses that. Like they pretty much became estranged when she like loses her Nigerian culture. She goes to Oxford, And now like the mom, like she's like kind of like allocated all of her like, you know, happiness and like sense of like attachment to her daughter, and then she loses that. But then it's crazy to see how towards the end she's able to like rekindle like that sense of purpose and joy, like with these like new relationships, even after like Carol isn't able to go with her, and eventually like that leads to her also being able to reconnect with Carol. And like a big part of that I think was her like escaping her like traditional Nigerian way of thought. Like there's like this like part in the middle where, I mean, pretty much the reason why she's not able to have that relationship with Carol anymore is because like she kind of betrays the Nigerian roots. So because of that, she ends that relationship, and then later on she kind of has this lesbian relationship for a while. But then eventually she psychs herself out because she's like, what if my mother saw this? Like she wouldn't approve of it, and eventually she like stops being able to enjoy that as well. And then like slowly she's finally able to like grow away from that when she like enters this relationship with a Ghanaian dude. And then because of that, she starts to realize like, you know what, like just because like my daughter isn't fully Nigerian doesn't mean I can't still love her. And then she's like, okay, yeah. And then like she sees eventually like her white husband, it like makes her eat like the Nigerian food that even like she doesn't eat by herself. So like she's even like supporting that side of her. So I thought that was a pretty cool theme to see.
Yeah, I think the first time I realized that that Bumi was doing, like really doing it for herself, was like at first I thought she had started the business, she was doing it because she was like trying to make more money, but then by that point Carol already had her job and could definitely like probably financially support her mother. But she was like, by the time that Carol was working at the bank, I had 10 employees. So like by that point she was really just doing it because she was like, I'm a businesswoman, like this is my thing, like I'm about this. Like I remember reading that and be like, oh yeah, she's not doing this because she like needs money.
Yeah.
To raise or like to pay for Carol's stuff. She's like doing it for herself. So that was really cool.
Yeah, that's even like touching on something that I think we talked about before, Gautam, where like, you know, like sometimes adults like they have their kid and then they allocate their entire purpose in life to the kid, and then after the kid moves out, like they're just kind of like bored. So this is like an example of like this woman, like she has her kid, the kid leaves, and then she rekindles that sense of purpose, and she's able to like continue her life as an individual as well.
Which is good, which is the ideal goal. It's awesome. Yeah. There's one thing I do want to mention, and actually, why don't you guys move on? Let me go grab my I'll go grab my charger real quick. You guys know.
Yeah.
I think that's all I have for Bumi, actually.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about it too.
I feel like it was just nice seeing like everything from Carol's perspective and then from Bumi's, because this was like the second time that we saw that like mother-daughter thing.
That mother-daughter thing, yeah. It's very different though. And it's actually really tragic, I think, like, because we already know what happened to Carol when she was 13, and then we see from Bumi's side and her having no idea what happened to her daughter, and then it's still affecting her relationship so much. It's like really sad to see that other perspective.
Yeah, or like when
the omnipotent knowledge.
Yeah, or like when she feels like Carol might judge her for when she was dating the woman.
Yeah.
And then like Carol probably would have been like chilling with it, and I don't know, it was just really sad to see them both kind of get into their heads and think that the other wouldn't like be okay with something that happened.
It was a sad decline of that relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing I wanted to mention, and I was kind of reading a little bit about the psychology of sexuality, and one thing that I saw that came up that people were like, you're not supposed to really say this in society, is that it seems that majority of people are somewhere on the spectrum of like, you know, if in an environment where everything is okay, you're not judged for anything, most people would lie somewhere in the middle. Like people are not like, I only like one or I only like the other. And so it seems like a lot of times, and this was some research that they had done where it was like a lot of people end up becoming lesbian or gay because they had extremely like negative experiences with one of the genders. And I feel like a lot of times in a lot of the examples here that happens, you know, like people like experiment. People are like, these are my experiences with men, these are my experiences with women. It seems that my experiences with men usually are typically worse, so I'm gonna go with women. It's not necessarily like something that's like, and that makes a lot of sense to me, but I feel like people don't really talk about that much, where it's like most people are kind of just on the spectrum. You might as well just try which one works better for you and then just go. It's not necessarily like, oh, I am 100% lesbian, I'm 100% straight. Like it's just like, that seems like something that people like to talk more about, but I don't think majority of people are on that. So I feel like a lot of women and in these stories, like they experiment and they see what works for them, and then if they happen to have negative men experiences, they go with women. If they have negative, and I think that's normal, and I feel like that type of sexuality is not talked about that much, where people are just experimenting and they go with what works for them. It's not like, oh, I go with women now, I'm 100% lesbian for life,
Yeah. Yeah, people aren't ready for that though. People don't want to admit that. I think that's pretty progressive, but I believe that could definitely be true.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there maybe are people who are
No, there are, yeah.
one thing or the other. Like, I'm not.
Yeah, no, there for sure.
But yeah,
like
definitely. I feel like in this case, maybe the reason that like Boomy was straight at all was because she was like expected to be with men. But
Yes.
maybe like she was just like a spectrum, and she was like she always would have been bi, but then she never thought about it until she saw this woman. So that's definitely like true. Like until they spend time, like if that hadn't happened, then she would have just lived her whole life as straight. Like I don't know.
Yes. That's what I'm saying. That's the only thing I'm always thinking. I'm like, how do you ever really know, Like how do you know? There's two possibilities. What if you're just like super selective, and like what if I'm actually gay and I just haven't met the one dude that exists on the planet who would actually make me fully gay? Like what if that's a possibility? Or how do I know until I've actually had a dick in my butt that I don't like it? Like those are two possibilities that you never fully actually know until you like, you know what I mean? You can never really cancel that option out.
Yeah. I mean, I think it depends, because for I don't remember who it was at the one of the women in the first section, but they were like, she tried men, she definitely didn't like it, or like no. And then one of the other ones was like, she knew from a very young age that she was lesbian. So I really think that
that's what I'm saying. How do you know you just haven't met the one dude that would not, like to know that there's not even a single person that would make you not the other way is impossible to know. That's impossible.
Yeah.
What if all the dudes in your society suck? But then if you happen to, like you just never fully know. Like you that's why you can never objectively 100% know like what your sexuality is. Because you never know that there could be an exception,
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Unless you've literally experienced every person in the planet, like it would be tough to know that there couldn't be one exception. If there's one exception, then your entire belief is gone.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I feel like that's a little bit complicated, because I know that's definitely.
No, it is complicated.
No, and that's definitely like something that like guys say to lesbian women is like, oh, you just haven't met the right guy. Like it could.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that they are straight. I'm just saying everyone's bi. Like saying what you just said would be an argument to try to convince a lesbian woman that they're straight.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm just saying I think more people are on the spectrum than are on the either end of it.
Yeah.
For sure. Than people actually talk about.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, that's just that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you guys want to move on to Letitia?
Sure. Yeah. This is a shorter one, I think, but pretty painful. This is a pretty yeah. Like honestly, finishing the chapter at the end of this, I was like, damn. I think this was probably like one of the other heavier ones.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. So what I was thinking from earlier was I felt really sad at the end when her dad came back. Like he's kind of the worst, but I guess do you guys believe that it's better to have a father figure? But also I feel like he's just gonna meet maybe some other woman and then leave again. Like
yeah.
Because she left him. Like he seems kind of like he is.
I think like earlier, like in my like description of it, like I may have painted him like more gloriously than I really wanted to. Like for sure, like he's definitely an asshole for leaving. Like just because he came back doesn't all of a sudden make him like a saint.
No, I feel like he's still an asshole even when he's coming back, because he only came back because she left.
Because the other person left, yeah. So it's like kind of like he's still like hella bad. I don't know, like that's what I was like even surprised that like his wife was like so accepting of him all of a sudden. Like it says like in that statement like, oh, like all her love came rushing back. So it's like I guess like theoretically they should still hella hate him, but like maybe just because like the situation they're in, like him coming back kind of just works out for them.
And I feel like that kind of ties back to what we were talking about earlier, where it's like the dude does seem like a pretty good guy outside of leaving, and I feel like no one is like an objectively evil human being. And I think that also plays into a role here where like he may actually also be a great guy outside of that one, just that decision, which may make it easier for when someone does like that does come back to your life. You're like, damn, okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think like going off that, like there's one specific interaction, even I think it was her first baby daddy at the grocery store, where he said like, oh, he wasn't a bad guy, he was just weak. So I think like maybe if she like heard that and like kind of like believed it, then like it would be easier to forgive her dad, because then you can say like, okay, you know what, like he wasn't evil, like he just wasn't strong.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a worse crime to be like bad and immoral than it is to just be weak. So if she was able to make that distinction, that might make her a little bit more open to accepting him after he comes back.
And that would probably be the more accurate one too, than just like painting somebody as just bad. Like that's just very I don't know.
Yeah, I think like it's just that the thing is while he was there, he was like a good dad. Like she missed him so much, and like she loved him so much when he was there. And I feel like her life just completely changed after he left, and maybe it would have been different if he'd stayed. But then it's also just like, I mean, I don't know, like if she has this fear, this would be my thought, is like how do they know he's not gonna like leave again? Yeah.
I mean, I guess you never know that though. Yeah, but
yeah,
that's true.
He does. He's, even if he's not like he's just like a weak person. Like he might have like another weak moment. Is like the thing. But then her youngest son, something like she saw him and she was like, oh, he needed like a father in his life. So I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so I feel like here, like being kind of like an Indian, and like being surrounded by Indians, like I never like see that happen. Like dad's leaving really, like it's like so like foreign to me that like I feel like I don't really understand it that well. Like to me, like I'm looking at objectively like how fucked up that is, and like growing up without a dad, right? But then I feel like still at the end of the day, like that's still your dad, so you still love him even though they do hella fucked up shit. But like I wouldn't be able to really understand that because I've never seen it.
Yeah.
Like that human side where like you still have like a weak spot for that person just because they're your father. Like, I mean, it could be, or it also could not be. Like, I just wouldn't know.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. That's true.
Yeah, because I feel like that also deeply affected her older sister, because this dad who now came back, he never really loved her because I guess he always saw her as like kind of second best to Letitia, because she wasn't like really his daughter. And then she goes to see like her actual father and he doesn't want anything to do with her. So I think that contributes to sort of her
decline.
That's tough. Decline. Yeah, that one is tough.
Yeah.
Because I guess her dad didn't say it was his mom, right? Her grandma that said that.
Because after she went and talked to him, right? Or he was just
no, I think she didn't even get to see him. She just called him or something, and then I don't think she actually talked to him. Or
like the grandma talked to him and
yes.
Bye.
Do you think like to some extent it's like easier for her to have never met him and to be able to just paint him out as like an evil fucked up guy than to like actually see the human?
Yes, it's always easy. Yeah, I think that's why it's rather than actually take the time, and sometimes it's mentally better to just be like, that person just sucks, than to like really go down the hole of like, what does it mean to suck? Does this person really suck? Like, like there's too many questions to where you actually humanize the person. Because every person can be humanized like that. Like 100%, if Hitler had an autobiography and a Netflix show, you'd 100% be humanized, Anybody whose story is explained will become humanized. But that could be a good thing. Like maybe it's good to humanize everyone. I don't know.
But it's just like the whole like way everything went down with her. Like every single dude, like when you read into it, you kind of like know like it's gonna happen. It just like feels so bad, and like I think like each time I kind of had a little bit of hope. Like I kind of related to her. I was like, okay, maybe this dude will be better.
No,
And then like it's always just so disappointing. Like the disappointment
Yeah.
really is like illustrated in such
it
a
hurts. Yeah.
good way. Like
Yeah, you
every
like really
single
feel
one,
for
dude.
her.
Yeah,
I
dude.
feel like a lot of what this book does is like humanize people who are just a statistic, or who it's easy to like look
Mhm.
down on and just be like, oh, like that's something that would never happen to me. Like she got pregnant by 3 guys in 3 years. And then you like
Yeah.
read her story and you're like, oh my God. Like,
Yeah, you really feel like you really like ride it out with them. You're like, okay, you know what? Like it's not that foreign anymore.
No,
yeah.
literally exactly what you said, DT, is what it says on the back. Sparkingly witty, centering voices we often see othered.
Yeah.
Like literally
Mm.
exactly that. Like, and I think that's totally true. Like people you normally see on the street and you're like, oh, they just fucked up their life or something. Like, like I'm just saying like that like thought or whatever people normally have, it's like you actually see a human side of them.
Yeah. I think
So
it's
nice.
important because I feel like a lot of people are not good at empathizing
Yeah.
Yeah,
with
me. No,
people.
me.
Like,
Literally me. Like
For
I'm
sure, for
awful
sure.
at
No,
it.
this book was something else. Like
Yeah,
I
like
would never be able to relate at this level
that's
or
what I'm
even
saying. Like
this
this
understanding.
book has literally like no like next
wait,
level.
really?
Yes, like I have
Oh,
never like
wow.
actually felt a type of way for any human being. This book has definitely like really made me be like, damn, you gotta like actually, give people the,
Mm,
the just a chance like to really like talk what they've been through. And I think
yeah.
Humans of New York does a really good job of that. I remember when I was on Facebook, like I
Mm.
used to read their stuff a
Mm.
lot, and like I was like, damn, like people are so interesting. Like it's so easy to walk by people and just be like, all right, just human beings. But then you
Yeah.
like each person has a crazy story, and it really just like it makes the world around you more beautiful. But at the
Yeah.
same time, it just creates also crazy because there's some wild ass people out there. Because if they had a chapter about Trey in here, we also would be like, damn, Trey been through some crazy shit, man. Like I hope he's okay. Like every human.
Fuck Trey, bro. That guy
But,
is so
but I'm
bad.
just saying, like everyone has
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. No,
You
no, no. I
know?
know what you're saying,
Yeah.
but he's
Like
just like
with
so
like how
disgusting,
he did
dude.
with Nzinga, kind of.
Yes, exactly. Like it's easier
Not
to
that
just
she's on the same level as Trey, but I don't know.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess yeah.
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 No, she's crazy. She's
No,
like
yeah.
she was
She's
hella
definitely
abusing her,
she's
but she
definitely
like
crazy.
actually like
No, she's
slapped her. Like
definitely
she like didn't
crazy.
let her go
Oh
out.
wait, yeah,
Like
you're right. You're right.
She's
Zinga
definitely
was
crazy. She
hella
took him
bad,
to a
dude.
whole
And
other
she would do it
country
to like
and
Hella
multiple
trapped her in a
women too.
cult. Like
True.
she's wild.
True. That
No,
is
no,
very
no, no,
true.
no. She literally took her out into the wilderness where there was no one within miles, isolated her from everyone else. Like freaking like
That's some next level.
the Zinga was a nutcase, dude. No doubt about it.
It was crazy.
I'm saying it, dude.
And she was 6'5" or something. Like
Yeah,
damn,
and she was
bro.
like 6'4", yeah.
I would be like, sorry, Amma, please. 6'5" is a wrap, bro. Like, dude. All right, but this is one last thing. At least from what I want to say. And you guys had, but one thing I caught about Carol that I personally don't really like when I think like this or anyone else thinks like this. On page 145, she says something. Letitia's probably a baby mother now, or a gang leader, or banged up, or all three. And I thought that was just like really, like kind of like shady because I was like Letitia didn't really do anything that bad to her, and like to just like think of someone else in your past and just be like, oh, they're probably like in what you perceive to be very low, to just be like, oh, they're probably one of those. I don't know. It's just kind of like, why would you want someone to go through that? Why would you ever be like, oh, she's probably banged up or all three? Like, like
Yeah,
saying that about
it's
someone else says more about you than it actually does about them.
yeah.
And I felt like,
I feel like it's isn't it like a sick way for her to make herself feel better about like
For sure.
switching up?
yes, and so that's why when I read that line, I was like, I hope I didn't look forward and see who else was in this chapter, but I was like, damn, that I hope Letitia's doing something good. After I read that line, I was like,
Hmm.
because when people feel like that, I always want to be that one person that's like, nah, it's like
Yeah.
so, and so I was happy to see read Letitia's, and even though she went through all that, it does seem like she has.
It really does. No, she says like the new Letitia. There's like this whole section. She's like the new Letitia
Yeah.
didn't do this. The new Letitia doesn't do
And,
that.
and there's a part in it where she actually talks about Chloe, or what's her name, Carol. And
Carol,
I wish
yeah.
like I could see her again so she knows I'm not the same anymore. It's a different type of like mindset, It's like I'm different, like, and I really like that. So I because of that one line, I definitely resonate with Letitia a lot more than I do with Carol.
Mm.
That one line
Yeah.
definitely turned me off like hard. I was like, yeah, that's kind of mean. It's mean to say to somebody else.
I think
Yeah.
like the way that I saw it wasn't that she wanted that to happen to her, or like it was just she was just to me it was just like, well, that's probably what happened to her because that's what happens to all the girls where I come from. Like,
She's a statistician. It's like probability
Kinda,
wise.
like, no,
I mean,
she
yeah,
was
she's
like-
hella a math person.
no, she wasn't
That's
like
true.
hoping it. She was just like straight up being like, okay, like this is probably what happened to her because that's what happened to me if I'd continued on that path. Like when for a year when she like stopped doing school stuff. Like I think that's just how she saw it. Is like
Hmm.
what I thought about.
Yeah, maybe, but I don't know about those specific. Like, I don't think you can say gang leader and not have a negative connotation towards that. Like, I think there is a little bit of.
No, I don't think it's about the
I
negative.
definitely
It's
think
negative,
it's like
but it's like she's not hoping for it.
yeah, she's not hoping for it is like what I'm is what I'm
Mm.
saying because she's definitely not hoping for it. She's just like resigned to the fact that that's probably what happened to her. But I think what's interesting with Letitia's chapters, you see that she is one of those things. Like she did have like
A baby mother.
yeah, she is like a baby mother, but like it's not bad. Like she's still
Yeah.
like a person.
I
who
guess
has,
it's a
like-
gang leader one that caught me off. Like, I think the other ones, like, I mean, but even the other ones, I don't know. Yeah, I guess like it depends on how you read it and like how. Yeah, I guess can you say it both ways? Maybe like I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
Mm,
Mm.
mhm.
Yeah, that Letitia's chapter was heartbreaking though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think it's because like at the end of every other chapter, they would have like Carol, for instance, like she met this guy who was like so great, and then now they're getting married, and then like Boomy, and then like you read the third one and you think like that third guy was like, oh my god, he's gonna raise her other two babies with her, and then you find out that he isn't.
He
So
was
I
the
think
worst out of
the author kind of set us up because they gave us these happy endings, and then they gave us like in terms of
Dang.
relationship, and then
That's
they
true.
gave
You just brought up another good point. Like, don't make us read into that. Like, damn, like, are we just like falsely believing the other people are happy just because they're in a relationship, but just because this one isn't, we're like, oh, she's probably not. But
yeah.
maybe the other
Definitely
ones are
not,
equally
definitely not.
ass, and they're like, but just because they're in a
Yeah.
relationship, they're like, oh, they're all okay now. They're in a loving relationship, but like, damn.
But that is kind of the way that she ended them. It was very like
Yeah.
happily ever after kind of vibe, like with Dominique, where it's like happily ever after, her and her wife and their two kids, like and like Boomy, her and her husband, and like they see her on the weekends.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the author goes out of the way because like like a lot of the times the worst things about these stories is like the type of relationships they have in the past, and at the end, like when the author goes out of the way and like talks about how great this new one is.
Yeah.
Like I almost feel like it's safe to say like, okay, yeah, like it's happily ever after.
It is happily ever. It's
Interesting.
that's the vibe that she's painting, and that's why I think I was so shocked at the end when Letitia's dad came back, but because I was like,
You
oh
know-
my god, like I don't know.
I actually didn't get a happily ever after vibe from any of them. Like, I got more of like a, like I am now healing type of vibe,
Mhm.
more than like a
Hmm.
everything's all great from now.
That's fair. Yeah,
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah, that is fair. That's true.
But this book is fire, man. Like the fact that we had this much to say, like
Yeah, we had a lot to say.
Yeah.
there's
honestly.
more, and there's more. Like we really definitely like
Yeah,
cut a
we
little
could,
back.
yeah.
Like there's a lot. Like this book is deep.
Yeah, well, okay. I think part of it is actually like the fact that there's like 6 clear segments that we can talk about topic by topic. I feel like in the other books, there's probably a lot to say, but it just kind of becomes blurred out, and it's hard to like draw those lines. Like, okay, we discussed this, we discussed this, we discussed that. So like, since you have nice categories, we're able to like talk a lot about each one.
That's true.
Yeah.
Good point. Yes. I'm really happy we're reading this. So thanks for.
Yeah,
recommending
that was a
this.
good one. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes. I personally hope it doesn't all tie in together, but I think it might, but I hope it doesn't.
Mhm.
I kind of like them being distinct. I feel like them all coming together is a little Disney-ish for me.
Yeah.
Possible. Good meeting,
Yeah.
y'all.
All right, guys.
Yeah, this is a great one.
So should we finish? Yeah, by next one?
2
Yeah.
weeks, finish the
2
rest.
Yeah. It's the same amount, almost same amount, a little more than what we just read.
All right,
Sounds good.
for sure.
All right, guys.
All right, y'all have a good week.
Okay.
Bye.
I recorded this one too. Is that good?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. All right. Bye,
I
guys.
will see y'all in 2 weeks. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, of course, man. Bye.
Bye, y'all.